Second to final, great prayers demand great courage. Why? Because they're dangerous. Great prayers take us to places with God and with ourselves that are frightening. Praying goes far beyond words and talking. They're prayers that God delights in, are ones that call us to exercise every fiber of moral courage that we can muster before a holy God. And you say, well, what do you mean? I mean, how do you say great prayers demand courage? Great prayers demand courage because they boldly demand of God that He live up to His character. This is a level of praying that I think is rare and one that brings great delight and that you don't go into unless you're in the right place in your relationship with God. But there are prayers that are dangerous and they take great courage because they boldly demand in reverence that God live up to His character. Genesis 18, remember the picture? Abraham. The angel of the Lord, the Trinity shows up and I don't know how all that works. Should we reveal to Abraham what we're about to do? And you know the story. And they decide, okay, and the second person of the Trinity, manifestation, speaks to Abraham and tells him what he's about to do. And there's perversion and there's sin and we're going to destroy it. And Abraham says, very interestingly, would the judge of all the earth slay the righteous with the wicked? In other words, that's out of character. Wait, time out. That can't happen. You're just, you're righteous. You would never give anyone a raw deal. You're the God of the universe. You're always fair. What if there were 50 righteous? Would you still destroy it? Can you imagine really talking with the God of the universe like this? And what's it based on? It's based on His character. What's Abraham saying? Live up to your character, God. Esther, we got a situation, the whole Jewish nation is going to be wiped out. Mordecai, her uncle, comes to her and says, this is loose translation of the actual Hebrew, of course, honey, you may think you're safe, but all of us Jewish people are going to die. Could it be that God placed you as the queen for such a time as this? And she asked all the people to fast, and they fast and drink or eat nothing for 3 days. And she risks her life. She goes before the king. And remember what her words are? If I perish, I perish. Great prayers demand courage because there's times where you don't just go and say, God, you need to live up to your character. You go and you pray, and God says, guess what? You're the answer to the prayer. You're the missionary that I want to go. You're the one who starts the ministry. You're the one who's supposed to fund it. And so Esther says, okay, I'll be the answer to the prayer. Nehemiah, what's he ask? He prays, Lord, please grant me success. You study chapter 1 and chapter 2 of Nehemiah, what do you realize? He's prayed for about 4 months, started alone. He ends up, we find he's praying with a small group, and he realizes, God says, Nehemiah, you're the man. 4 months of prayer, and guess what the answer is? It's you. I want you to go talk to the king. I want you to ask for a sabbatical. I want you to go rebuild Jerusalem. And he does it at the risk of his life. Final example there, and the greatest example, is Jesus. He's in the garden. He prayed an actual prayer. He's fully God, but he's fully man without confusion. And in the garden he says, Lord, may this cup pass from me. Translation, I know from the foundations of the earth, we decided this is it, but maybe there's a plan B we could reconsider. That's really what he's praying. If there's any other way, as a human, as a man, as and the dependence of the Holy Spirit, and saying, knowing it was going to mean separation from the Father, knowing what was going to occur, he said, if there's any way for this to bypass me, may it be. Nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done. He's the answer to the prayer, and we're glad he is. And that is exactly what Jesus taught his disciples to pray. For thine is the kingdom, and the power and the glory forever and ever. Amen. We can be active, but what the church and the world needs are people who pray. Not people who talk about prayer, not people who can explain prayer, but people who really pray. People who pray out of a heart that is deeply personal. People who pray out of a sense of deeply brokenness and not self-sufficiency. People who pray and would take God seriously and His promises seriously and His word seriously. People who would understand, God, we desperately need you. People who would stand in the gap. People who would be courageous and say, I'm going to pray and I'm going to seek you. And if I'm the answer to the prayer, although it frightens me to death, I'm going to remember that you're Abba and that you're a good Father and that your will is great and that the safest place in all the world is the center of your will. And that's why the sixth characteristic is really a summary, is that great prayers ask the improbable, expect the impossible, and receive the unthinkable because of Jesus. See, great prayers always go back to Jesus. It was in Hebrews 4, we have a great high priest we know about, but literally it talks about he blazes a trail so that we can come boldly before the throne of God. He says, he commands us, go boldly before the throne of God. Before the throne of what? To find mercy in our time of need. My standing, my basis, my power, my effectiveness for the answers of moving God's heart, for Him to do dynamic, supernatural, over-the-top things for His glory is solely based on Jesus and what He's done. And so we can ask the improbable. By improbable, it's like, is it improbable to say that God could do a great work in a relationship in your family that you think it's been broken for 35 years? It's improbable to say that God could do something in your church and use you to begin to see something happen like never before. We can ask the improbable, but we can expect the impossible. Because nothing is impossible for God. And then we will see this book is filled with God doing the unthinkable, the exceedingly abundantly beyond what you could ask or think. And it's because of Jesus. Jesus' command, we boldly ask the improbable. Seek, right? And you'll find. Knock, and it'll be opened. Ask, and you'll receive. That's what He's saying. Ask, seek, knock. He commands us. It's because of Jesus' promise we can expect the impossible. The promise is, ask my Father for anything. Until now you haven't asked. Ask that you can receive. Why? So your joy can be made full as you become a part of what the Father wants to accomplish in the world. And finally, because Jesus' power. And we are people of great, great power. Exceedingly, abundantly beyond what you could ask or think. Abba, Father, holy is your name. I want your kingdom, your agenda to come, and your will be done. I want it to be done with the efficiency and the smoothness on earth as it is in heaven. I want you to provide for me what I need, my daily needs, but I'm not going to just stop there. I want you to forgive me, and I want you to do a work in my heart, in me, in the same way that I begin to learn to give and forgive and to loose the people that have wounded and hurt me. And God, I want you to know I want your kingdom and your rule and your power and your glory to be paramount. And I want you to know I want it so badly, in spite of how fallen I am and how broken that I am, is that I will courageously pray prayers that if you tap me on the shoulder and say, Ingram, guess what? The answer to this one is you. Then I will step up to the plate in my weakness. And I will believe that you will give me what I need, not tomorrow or next week or what I think it's going to take. You'll give me what I need today. And when I wake up tomorrow, you'll give me what I need tomorrow. And when I wake up the next day, you'll give me what I need. So that your life and your word and your agenda and your glory gets fulfilled. That's the journey I'm on.
Well, Chip, before we wrap up this program, I think it'd be helpful for our listeners if you reviewed those 6 characteristics of great prayers. Would you take a minute and do that for us?
I'd be glad to, Dave. I'm married to someone that really epitomizes for me someone who prays great prayers. So I have the benefit of living with someone who constantly reminds me, not with her words, but by her behavior. And so let me go through these 6 and just ask you to lean back right now and listen. And rather than be overwhelmed with guilt, which I think what happens when people start talking to one another about praying and praying deeply and great prayers, and maybe just ask yourself, as I give these, Lord, would you whisper in my heart where you want me to focus? He's not down on you. He doesn't have a little measuring stick going, oh, that's only a 2.5 prayer. I'm looking for 10.0 prayers. What he's looking for is, number one, they're deeply personal. You're praying from the heart. You're not praying so you don't feel guilty. It's really from the heart. Second, they're birthed in brokenness. Sometimes the greatest prayers don't have to be long, but they're this sense of desperation that you realize you can't do it. You're at the end of your rope. They're birthed in brokenness. Third, they champion God's agenda. You know, so often we're people, right? We're human. We God, do this, please work this out, etc. Great prayers champion, God, what do you want to do in my life? What do you want to do in my family? What do you want to do in my singleness? What do you want to do in my community? What do you want to do in your world? What do you want to do where I work? Fourth is they take God seriously. They really believe, you said this. I may not feel it, but you said it. I'm going to take you at your word. Number five, they demand courage. You know, I gave the example of Esther and Nehemiah, and sometimes you start really praying about stuff and he'll tap you on the shoulder and say, guess what? You are the answer to this one. And finally, they expect the impossible. There's a point in time where it's actually easier when it's impossible than it's hard to say, God, I can't change my mate. God, I can't solve this problem. But I'm expecting, because you're the God of the impossible, for you to intervene. Tozer said, if you pray to an omnipotent God who's all-powerful, then everything God can do, prayer can do. Let me encourage you to choose one of those today and pray a great prayer.